Today, the text known as the Big Book sits at the foundation of modern addiction recovery. It has sold tens of millions of copies worldwide, offering a lifeline to people in nearly every country on Earth. Looking at the sheer scale of Alcoholics Anonymous today, it is tempting to imagine its founders, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith, retreating to a quiet room and channeling this organization into existence through pure spiritual inspiration. But the reality of late 1930s New York paints a very different picture. In its earliest days, this fellowship was a tiny, fragile, and utterly broke group of newly sober alcoholics. They faced a very real existential deadline. Without a physical, distributable text explaining their recovery method, everything they had figured out would simply disappear the moment they were gone. Enter Franbk Parkhurst. He was one of Bill Wilson's first successful recoveries, earning him the nickname AA No. 2 in New York. Before alcoholism cost him his career, Hank had been a high-powered executive with Standard Oil. Because of that background, Hank approached the group's survival with an executive mindset. While others focused on spiritual guidance, he saw a problem of corporate logistics. Keeping this infant movement alive was going to take a rigid, calculated business plan. Hank immediately began pressuring Bill Wilson to sit down and write the manuscript. He treated the book like a mandatory corporate deliverable, demanding constant progress from his partner. But once they had the words, they hit a wall. Traditional publishing houses had no interest in printing a medical and spiritual guide written by a group of recovering alcoholics. So Hank bypassed the gatekeepers entirely. He organized a startup, co-founding a business entity called Works Publishing Company so they could print the book themselves. Setting up a publishing house from scratch meant aggressively scrounging for capital, selling advanced shares, and managing a massive print run with zero financial safety net. Hank managed these operations down to the floor level, coordinating directly with the shops that were feeding the heavy mechanical presses. Getting the pages printed was only half the battle. This first edition was a highly physical, manual production, with the finished products having to be glued, stitched, and bound entirely by hand. Works Publishing served as the mechanism that translated a spiritual manuscript into a tangible product. Hank's influence extended from the ledger books into the actual text. He took a hands-on role in shaping the content of the manuscript. In fact, the only instructional chapter in the entire first edition that Bill Wilson did not write is the section titled To Employers, which Hank drafted himself. He also included his personal story in the first edition, publishing his experience under the title The Unbeliever. That title was literal. Hank was an avowed agnostic, and he clashed with the sectarian religious language that dominated the earliest drafts of the manuscript. He argued that relying on rigid religious vocabulary would alienate people who desperately needed the program, but did not share those specific beliefs. He successfully campaigned for more inclusive wording, which led to the adoption of the phrase, God as we understood him. The publication of the Big Book was an immediate success, launching Alcoholics Anonymous onto the national stage. But behind the scenes, the stress of the operation was fracturing the leadership. Disputes erupted between Hank and Bill over money and the management of Works Publishing. Then, around 1940, after 4 years of sobriety, Hank relapsed. He drifted away from the fellowship he helped build and died in 1954 without regaining his former prominence. In those early years, the organization was trying to prove its program worked. To do that, they naturally highlighted examples of long-term recovery. Because Hank's story took a difficult turn, his early contributions quietly faded from the organization's public memory. Today, however, historians are restoring his legacy, recognizing that the Big Book might never have been published without his drive. The creation of the Big Book proves that world-changing service does not require personal perfection, and that enduring contributions are often made by those who are still struggling themselves.